Hello and welcome back to the Book Marketing Tips and Author Success Podcast. This is Penny Sansevieri with my awesome co-host, Amy Cornell. We were cracking up about something in the green room, so that's why I started this podcast kind of laughing. It's just, sometimes we have these conversations that I think, oh, I hope nobody else is listening because we sound a little weird, right? Or maybe I sound a little weird. So one of the things that we talked about a few shows ago was that I feel like we've been doing a lot of shows on Amazon, and this one is no different. So we're talking about these dead end categories on Amazon, sometimes referred to as ghost categories. I like the term dead end better just because they don't go anywhere, right? And apparently there is a large number of categories. So let me back up first off. So since Amazon made this category change, I think it was in March, obviously Amazon didn't cross all the T's and dot all the I's on this, which is shocking, right? That Amazon rolled out something that wasn't fully like ready to go. What's happened in this process? So the reason that we wanted to do this show is because there's a lot being made of these ghost / what we're calling dead end categories. And we want to kind of demystify this because it is a big deal, but it's not as big of a deal as I think is being made to be. And basically, just to kind of circle back to what I was saying a minute ago, Amazon rolled out this change in March, and I don't think that they were prepared for all of for the changes, right? So what ends up happening is that when you go into Amazon, when you go into the back end of Amazon, when you go into KDP and you select categories, some of those may be categories that go to a dead end page, right? To a page with basically nothing on it. Now, you're maybe listening to this thinking, oh my gosh, those could be my categories. We're going to talk you through how to figure out if you're in a dead end category. And then, on the other side of this is we're going to talk about how to avoid it, because obviously you don't want to be in a dead end category. Now, this is something that I think, this isn't something that Amazon did intentionally. It's just, I think the process honestly is still shaking out. I think with all the categories that Amazon has and all the books that are being published every single day, I think that this is really just a glitch. I don't think this is Amazon trying to like sabotage your life.
No. Yeah, no, I agree, Penny. And you know what's also not talked about, probably because it makes it a lot less breaking newsy, if that's a new word I can create, is that this has kind of happened. This is not entirely new, because if you are searching and digging through categories, even on the front end of Amazon as a shopper, or even doing research, there are times where when you select something, Amazon will shift it around on you and kind of say like, well, this is where you know what I mean? And this is where you really need to be. So you could be going down the rabbit hole, and then on the front end, if you select what on the back end we're calling a dead end category, you'll notice that everything on the left-hand side there kind of switches up on you. And if you go to look for it, you will see it happen. And that's Amazon saying like, based on what you're looking for, this is actually the real place you need to be. And unfortunately, on the back end, you don't see that happening. So Amazon has it on the back end as well, but there's no way to realize that you're kind of hit a dead end. They'll just let you select it. Whereas on the front end, it shifts everything for you. It kind of does that work to get you to where you really need to be based on what's available for, actual purchasing in categories that really exist. But on the back end, they'll just let you keep wandering down that road and be like, fine, here, select it. Know?
Well, and I think that to your point, I think that this shows, so Amazon doesn't really prioritize books, which is ironic considering the fact that Amazon built their tidy little fortune on books, right? So Amazon, that's the first thing they offered was books, but Amazon does not prioritize books. We know this. We've had this conversation multiple times. So I think that what you're seeing, right, with your categories on products may or may not be happening on the book side. Maybe it is, but it may not be happening on the book side. So what, and the only reason that this matters actually is because you don't want to rank for a category that doesn't really have a category, right? You don't want to rank for something that doesn't really have a page, because you can't really rank for something that doesn't have a category. It gets very complex, and we don't want to get too far down into the weeds. But a couple of ways, and this is something that Amy and I talked about, one of the best ways to avoid this is not to leave your Amazon category search to the KDP dashboard. Because Amy, when we do category searches, we always do them on the front end, right? I mean, on the Amazon site.
Yes, we always do it on the Amazon site. And then as I go along, I record promising categories and I keep track of how many books are in, you know what I mean? So I have like this short list of ones that look the most promising based on all the ones that I look through, and you know what I mean? And then from that list, I'm prepared to go into the back end and actually make selections. I don't use the back end for any sort of research because you don't have numbers. Like there's nothing to go off of.
Right.
It's really just for making the selections. And I think one that I can think of off the top of my head that this happens with a lot, Penny, is when you start getting into that gray area of like women's fiction and romance, that will happen a lot. Like if you're on the front end and you start going down that path to choosing women's fiction that has romantic elements, it will actually kind of switch you back over to romance as the main category. And then, so it does happen with books and products. But again, on the front end, Amazon does the work for you and redirects you where you need to go. On the back end, it won't redirect you. It will just let you select whatever you find. And I think, sadly, it's probably for this kind of delusional ease of use thing, but it's really not serving anybody, you know?
Right. And if you're thinking, well, I don't know how to do the search on the Amazon site, et cetera. Well, you can buy a copy of my book. No, I'm just kidding. Well, actually you can. I'm not totally kidding.
Yeah.
My point being is that you could actually go, if you go into your KDP dashboard right now and you click on the categories that you picked, and even as you're clicking them, so as you're searching the categories, if you click on those links, it will show you whether or not that category is a dead end or not. Mm-hmm. So, for example, right? So let's say you're in the KDP dashboard and you're like, oh, I really like this link of, I don't know, whatever it is, like holiday romance. And holiday romance is not a dead end category. Let me just start there. If you're hearing this, you're like, oh my gosh, that's my category. But it will show a little blue line. It'll show a little link, and you can click on that and see right away what's showing up and whether or not it's a dead end category. So if you're in the KDP dashboard and you're like, I don't know how to search on the front end, I don't really understand any of that, and you still want to start your search in KDP, if you click those links, it'll show you right away whether or not the category is a dead end. By the same token, if you have already made if you've already made your choices, you can go in there now and take a look and click on those and see whether or not you need to shift your category around.
Exactly.
So, I mean, Amy, don't you think that this is something that's going to shake out?
Yeah. I mean, again, I think every time Amazon changes stuff, there's a chance to do things incorrectly. You know, that's just how it is.
Right. Right. Exactly.
I mean, and this is just another one of those incidences of why we do shows on these sometimes seemingly minor, sometimes not so minor updates, is because there's always a way to do it correctly. You just have to know the way to do it correctly. And I think this is one of those where, you know, yes, it seems easier in some ways, like, oh, look, you just go to your dashboard, go through this, you know, they walk you through it. It seems very intuitive on the back end. And it really is actually, if you know what you're looking for, you know what I mean? If you're confident in the selections you want to make. But unfortunately, the ease of use of it also can lead authors to choosing dead end categories. And you would never know the difference unless you check your work on the front end.
Right.
And that's just, you know, that's why we have to talk about it. So now you know.
Right. Exactly. The other piece to this, or I guess the second part of this conversation, is the fact that Amazon can change your category if they feel like the book is, if you have selected a category that doesn't really speak to the book's audience. And Amazon has not told us that. They haven't called us to say, hey, Amy and Penny, this is what we're doing. But we've seen evidence of this happening. And the reason that this happened. So basically what is going on, boys and girls, is that some authors ruined it for you, right?
Mm-hmm.
And now Amazon's like, well, we're not sure if we can trust you to pick the right categories. And so if they see that your book is not really self-help, or if that your book is not really whatever, right, they could potentially move the categories on you. And sometimes this happens accidentally. And then it happens accidentally if, let's say, your Amazon keywords don't match up with your category, right? The keyword strings that you selected. If your book description doesn't match up with your category, right? And then also, on the other side of that is your Amazon ads. Amazon ads have to, everything has to be in alignment, as we say, right? Because otherwise, and I think that this is, Amazon cares about just one thing. They care about the user experience. Obviously, they've built an empire caring about the user experience. So this is not at all at fault with Amazon. Sometimes they don't always get it right. I mean, we've seen that too. Right?
Right. But absolutely. But in this case, I really did think they tried to simplify things, but unfortunately it got so simple. And like you said, like, it's just not designed on the back end to redirect you correctly like it is on the front end when if you're shopping by category, especially for books, which I don't know if people do that for anything else, but it can be handy if you like a certain genre. But they will redirect you on the front end if you're using it like a shopper, but if you're using the back end like an author, there's just this kind of, you just need to know what you're doing assumption.
Right, exactly. So be aware that keywords, the incorrect keywords can, if they aren't a match to your category. And let me give you a better example of this. So we've had a couple of authors this year who have memoir, and they want these books to be actually self-help. And some memoir are prescriptive, right? So they are more self-help. So you teach other people kind of through your story, but you have to be really careful with that in particular. I mean, I'm pretty sure that's a hot button for Amazon without even knowing this from anybody at Amazon. I'm betting that this is a hot button there. Because you have to really prove your case, and you have to prove it in your description. You have to prove it in your book cover. You have to prove it in all of the things, because otherwise Amazon's just going to put you in memoir, and then there you go. Right. Mm-hmm. So everything really has to line up. And I think, like I said, there's a lot of buzz going on around about these ghost categories, dead end categories, as we like to call them. But I think this will eventually shake out. I think it takes a while, just because there are a lot of categories, there are a lot of books being published. And, we talk about this a lot about authors who really want to try to kind of game the Amazon system. Of course, none of our listeners would ever want to do that. But part of the guidepost, so to speak, that Amazon has sort of put into place, right, is because they have to make sure that the user experience, that the consumer is getting what they want and getting what they're searching for. And that's the only thing, as I said, that's the only thing that Amazon cares about. So with that said, check your categories, make sure that they aren't a dead end category, that you aren't sending people off into Never Never Land. And if it's time for a category fix up, by all means, reach out to us. We'd love to help you with your Amazon optimization, and we will see you next time. Thanks for tuning in. Bye-bye.